Well, we better get going. I wonder, will we ever see each other again?
Who knows? God willing, we'll all meet again in Spaceballs 2. The search for more money.
Hey everybody, welcome to The Brick Pit, the podcast you didn't know that you didn't need, where we talk about pop culture, movies, television, and whatever comes into our little minds. That's a government-mandated podcast for anyone over 40. I am your host today, Josh, and with me, as always, is the man who once saw a plan, Jason.
It was in a case, very nicely lit. Couldn't take photos of it. They prevented that.
And Nicolas Cage was planning on stealing it.
Yeah, to pay the IRS off.
Yeah. After he gave up his dinosaur bones. Typically, we have another host, Adam. He is away canvassing for the Mondale campaign this week. So good luck to him. Come on, that's hilarious.
You just aged the people that get that joke.
I'm here. Look, our AARP cards are in the mail. I'm going to make Mondale jokes. It's election season. So today, I wanted to talk about sequels. More importantly, the very rare gem that is a sequel that is better than the original. I mean, typically, like we know Hollywood loves to recycle and reuse. So when a movie comes out, if it is a hit or even moderately successful, there's a good chance that they're going to roll out a sequel, and it's going to be a rehash mostly of greatest hits of what you saw before, and they're typically not as good. There are some notable exceptions, but they are exceptions. They rarely tread new ground. Sometimes when you get a pre-planned trilogy, maybe the center is better, but I don't really consider those sequels, especially if it's like an adaptation of a book or something like that, where you know where the arc is going. Jason, what do you think? Do you think sequels are typically not quite as good, even if they're enjoyable, than the original?
Yeah, they're generally cash grabs, and a lot of times they are taking movies that were never intended to be sequels, and they just had this one plot line, and once it's done, it's done. But then they have to come up with ways to keep it going. And so you get a lot of essentially copy and paste and trying to one-up it and make it better somehow, and usually kind of failing. But occasionally you get somebody who kind of understands what the core thing of it is that made it magical and made it great and is able to play off that. I think a good example is the Die Hard series of films.
Yeah.
Like the first Die Hard, great. Second Die Hard, we'll put it in an airport. The third Die Hard's like, hey, let's take this character and let's put him on his home turf of New York City and let him have the run of the entire city.
Yeah.
But still do those things that made the first Die Hard enjoyable, like he gets hurt. And there's repercussions for that. He talks to people and has interactions. And that was the magic of Die Hard. And I actually think Die Hard with a Vengeance is maybe not superior to the first one, but definitely on par. But I think even at times elevates beyond the first.
Yeah, I would agree. It's an excellent sequel. Like the second one, like if there's so many Die Hards now, but I only watch two of them. I watch Die Hard and Die Hard with a Vengeance, and that's it. The rest are kind of
after with a Vengeance, you get into that problem of them taking it too far in the other direction. Because, like I said, the cool thing about Die Hard, for an 80s action film, it was the hero that actually got hurt. And there was consequences to what he did. And by the fourth movie, he's almost superhuman. And the stunts and everything just keep getting bigger and bigger, and he just keeps walking away from them.
Well, what's interesting about the Die Hard is aside that he's very relatable. He's flawed, but he also is clever, and you can tell he is good at what he does. It's more than just murder. It's not cobra. You know,
Yeah, I think a good scene is when he's in Die Hard with the Vengeance, when he's in the elevator
Mhm.
with the bad guys. He goes back to the scene of the crime, or at least to the treasury next to it, and he's observant. So he notices that one of the bad guys is wearing the badge of one of his co-workers. Like you said, that shows him he's good at what he does. Like, that's what a detective needs. He needs to be observant. He needs to recognize the things around him and process that information. And it's such a small thing, but it works out to a cool scene and everything. But I also noticed, like, doing this, I had a couple of issues. One, not talking about stuff that we've already talked about like several times before.
Right.
We've mentioned a lot of that, maybe not in depth, but a lot of times, like, you get into it, Wrath of Khan is better than motion picture, and you have Undiscovered Country and Star Trek. I'm not going to fight you on this. It's God's honest truth. People know it.
I would debate you. I think that they're two different of animals to compete.
But Empire Strikes Back, objectively
Right.
the best Star Wars film, and not a planned trilogy, despite what George Lucas says.
Oh,
Yeah.
Lucas is such a confirmed liar.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, let's just. Oh no! I've got like 6 movies planned out. Do you, George?
No, originally it was 9, and then it was down to 6. But anyway,
why is Lawrence Kasdan over there writing something?
Yeah.
Whole cloth.
What is this Splinter of the Mind's Eye? What's this about?
Oh.
Anyway, the other thing that I noticed going through that is that these are mostly genre films.
Yeah.
And it's because they have to be, popular enough to spawn a sequel. So it's mostly horror and action. You get a lot of comedy in the 80s because comedy was a huge thing in the 80s movies. You occasionally get a good dramatic sequel or dramatic sequels like The Godfather 2, The Color of Money, which is a sequel to a 25-year-old film, The Hustler. Yeah. But those are the outliers.
Glengarry Glen Ross 2.
Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, right. What's interesting, though, is even within those genres, the originals that these films that I think supersede are typically, I have a notable exception on my list, but they're typically very good movies. And what the sequel does is expand upon that. So I noticed that you made a good point that a lot of these are one and done. It makes a lot of money, so they're like, let's make a sequel. But now that open-endedness is almost baked into a lot of films. There's always like some dangling participle at the end just in case.
Well, they're trying to build IPs now.
Right. But I think that ultimately that I'd rather have a half-baked sequel based on a film that was complete than have them put in these placeholders, because it's almost like you get an incomplete experience, and then like there's never going to be Morbius 2. Not that it was a good movie or anything, but
I mean, you run into that. Like it was Buckaroo Banzai and what was it? And we've actually talked about it.
The World Crime League.
Yeah, they promised a sequel to World Crime, but there was another one, and I can't remember because it was one of mine. We did it, Sword and Sorcery. The Sword and the Sorcerer, I think, is actually the name of it. But they promised a sequel on that too, and it never materialized because the original didn't make enough money, despite both of them becoming cult sensations later. But it was a risky bet back in the 80s.
Right. What's interesting about Buckaroo Banzai, though, is I think the promise of a sequel that never occurred actually
deepened it.
Yeah, it's actually like on brand because they're constantly referencing all these other adventures that happen.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really detract from the ending, because it's just like, yeah, of course he's going to go fight the World Crime League next. He's where else can he go?
Yeah, it's such an 80s movie too.
Again, we talked about that at length, and I enjoyed it conceptually, but probably too old to have actually sat down and watched it. It's Peter Weller.
Yeah. Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah. Let's start naming people that may or
Clancy
may not
Brown.
have even been in.
Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan shows up in a lot of 80s movies. They Live.
Yeah, generally is the villain. Yes.
Yes. Ronnie Reagan. Newt Gonray. All right. Well, the first film I want to talk about is I'm probably going to have a different opinion than you on this, but I do want to hear your thoughts on your first film here and why you think that it is superior to the original.
But which one specifically are you talking about?
The first one on your list.
Okay, making sure. I can never tell with you guys, but
Well, when I said the first one on your list, that I meant that.
it's rare where you actually say what you really mean.
I won't. No dispute.
The movie Josh is referring to is George Romero's 1978 film Dawn of the Dead.
They kill for one reason. They kill for food. They eat their victims.
Imagine, if you will, that something has gone terribly wrong.
Shoot it, man.
Now, accept the fact that there's no escaping the horrible consequences. George Romero brings back the dead. Night of the Living Dead has ended. Dawn of the Dead is here.
We must not be lulled by the concept that these are our family members or our friends. They are not. They will not respond to such emotions.
Operator dead. Post abandoned. We may never get out alive. It's everywhere. What the hell is it? Looks like a shopping center, one of those big indoor malls.
What are they doing? Why do they come here?
Some kind of instinct, memory, what they used to do. This was an important place in their lives.
What is it?
We've got a war.
I'm afraid.
We have spawned our own savagery. Soon it will consume us all. It is a horrible, hauntingly accurate vision of the mindless excesses of a society gone mad.
They must be destroyed on sight.
When there is no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
We are down to the line, folks. We are down to the line.
Dawn of the Dead.
I think both Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead are great movies.
Mm-hmm.
I think Dawn of the Dead is better because Romero kind of understood what could be done with a zombie movie at the time. The subtext of Night of the Living Dead was not intentional. It happened because the lead actor was a black man and he was like, I want this role. Because he understood what it would have meant for him to have been cast in that role. And the social commentary it would have made. George Romero admitted that he never considered it until after they had made the movie and he was actually saw it when they cut it together. He realized the racial commentary that they were making for a late 60s film starring a black man who winds up being shot by a bunch of rednecks. If you haven't seen the movie, sorry for spoiling the ending for, 50 plus years.
Not murdered based on race, but just just out of stupidity, just drunk and not thinking, I guess.
But there's all the racial subtext though that the dialogue creates between the character and everyone else who is trapped in the house with him, based off the fact of, once again, that a black man was cast in that role. Dawn of the Dead is very deliberately made to talk about consumerism. It is set in a mall. They play around in stores and everything. And of course, the zombies just gravitate toward it. Yeah. They just gravitate toward it naturally.
They're still here.
They're after us. They know we're still in here. They're after the place. They don't know why. They just remember that they want to be in here.
What the hell are they?
They're us, that's all. There's no more room in hell. What? It's something my granddaddy used to tell us. You know Macumbo? Voodoo. Granddad was a priest in Trinidad. Used to tell us, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth.
And attempt to get in and all that. And plus, the scavenger gangs and all that kind of stuff. I think it's a bit more powerful with that understanding, like George Romero putting those building blocks at the foundation of the film. Plus, I think just technically speaking, he's a more proficient filmmaker at that point.
Well, the special effects are certainly better.
Yeah. Bigger budget, better effects.
Yeah. When that zombie gets his head chopped off by the helicopter blades, that's that's so awesome.
Well, that's Tom Savini coming in.
Yeah.
Very early in his career, who is, of course, a masterful special effects man, especially for the low-budget horror films of the 70s and early 80s.
And a competent director in his own right.
Yes.
He did the remake that we talked about that I rather enjoyed. It's interesting. I mean, I definitely see your point. It's kind of like how I have a hard time ranking the captains in the Horatio Hornblower series. Star Trek, obviously. I always put Kirk first because he was first and he was the template. That's just how my brain works. And so I
Pike was first.
Chronologically within canon, yes. But Archer was before him, sir. Anyway, and then there's Robert April as well. If we want to get into the weeds, we can. But my point being, Shatner's portrayal of Captain of the Enterprise, whether you like it or not, set the bar and set the tone. He's the measuring stick.
We've said it several times, is that old saying, the Batman that you love is the one you read when you're 8 years old. It's the one that you introduced, the same James Bond, and any other character, Superman,
Doctor Who.
Yeah. All that. It's the one that you first started getting into that creates your foundation for those concepts. And that's kind of how you start to measure and judge everything that comes.
Right.
After.
It's hard for me to place Dawn over Night because of that. Just that's how my brain is wired, because it's the stick in which you measure all other zombie films. I mean, it really is. And I know it wasn't really they were technically ghouls and it wasn't really the first zombie, but
transformed
the
genre into becoming that.
Right. For the effect that had was like, based on that alone, I don't know if I can follow you over that bridge, but I certainly respect the opinion, because you're right. It is a more competently done film. The script is insanely, and this is crazy saying this about the film, it is a little more nuanced, even though it's not really a nuance, but there are other moments in there, like where she finds out that she's pregnant and he's like, hey, I know how to take care of this if you want to. And it's like, that was some pretty out there stuff to in the early 70s to be thrown out there on screen. So this was 79. You're right. I was only one at the time. So when I saw this in the theater,
his mother was actually still pregnant with him. That's why that scene really does just hit home.
Like, hey. Don't listen to that guy. It certainly did a lot more to create those tropes, not knowing or really caring why the zombies are happening, which I think is pretty fantastic. Just the lone survivors, the finding a place to hole up and the slow collapse, and then society, the remnants of society being more dangerous than the zombies. There's flickers of that in Night, but they're just Night is a much more intimate film because of budgetary reasons, obviously.
Yeah, it's more of people trapped in a building talking.
Yeah,
which is not to knock it. There's some really good movies that do that. It's good at it as well.
It's the My Dinner of Andre of zombie movies.
Yeah. But it's one of those, the budget so low. And that's, again, a trope of horror film is isolation and containment. Yet Night does have good dialogue, good character interactions. Once again, elevated by the fact, just by happenstance, that a black man was cast as the lead.
Right.
Whereas in this one, the characters are cast very deliberately. Ken Fourier is cast deliberately in his character's role as a black man, as a black character. Whereas in the first one, it was a character, kind of blank slate for any actor to fill.
Right.
Whereas, the racism that pops up in the second one is deliberately there. It's put there by George Romero from the get-go.
Well, I would ask our listeners, if you're still there, reach out to us and let us know if you agree with Jason. And not that I disagree, but and on all these films, do you agree or disagree if these sequels that we believe are superior than the original?
So just to go ahead, since we haven't done it yet, we've kind of talked around it, but just to give the brief synopsis, it is a sequel to Night of the Living Dead. They do reference the things that happened in the first movie at the beginning of the second one, even though it's a decade later. They put it as though it is going on essentially simultaneously. So a group of people, when all hell is breaking loose, one of them's a helicopter pilot, and so three of them, 2 men and a woman, get in a helicopter, and he flies, and they wind up landing on the roof of a mall, and then kind of bunkering themselves within the mall and dealing with zombie horde that's kind of gathering outside, but also just the mall becomes a playland to them inside there. I mean, there's a bank in there, and they start playing, like grabbing the money out of the drawers and all that kind of stuff, even though it's essentially useless. And then eventually a group of scavengers led by Tom Savini as a break in. And of course, in their breaking into the mall to loot it, they of course let all the zombies who've been trapped outside in, and it creates a conflict between them and the people there. And it, yet again, is also kind of dovetailed and referenced in the third film of this trilogy, The Day of the Dead.
Which I think is the weakest of the three.
I'll agree.
And it's not bad, but it's it's just not his best work.
No.
I mean, I think I even enjoyed Land of the Dead better than Day of the Dead. So make of that what you will.
Dennis Hopper versus zombies. What's not to like?
Fair point. The zombies smarten up a bit.
Yeah. Which is a progression.
Yeah, it was an interesting twist. That, they're like, hey, tools. Oh no! Not until the fast zombies are you get fast zombies that use tools. I guess they're basically people at that point, but then it's the crazies, which
they're
I like
libertarians. Just go back and we can dub over whatever political group you hate, listeners. Just email us and we'll do that for you.
There's so few of you, we can tailor make the episode.
Yes.
We're going to start spouting off political opinions and just have like a drop down menu that you can for that one person that still loves Mondale. when he was in that tank, I never felt more safe.
That was Dukakis, man.
Oh, that's right. That was Dukakis.
Oh, you can't even do your political jokes right.
I'm getting my failed political candidates mixed up. Next, I'll be talking about Ed Meese. All right. Well, good talk. I enjoyed that. I want to talk about a film that is not a great film, but it's a film that I like. It's a solid B movie. There's a group of films that it's a win and wear experience, this Buckaroo Banzai situation. Like, this is you catch it about a third of the way in late at night on like USA Up All Night or Night Flight. you're real tired, and it's kind of just like stream of consciousness. Like you're weaving in and out of dreams. Like, this is the perfect movie to have on during that time. And that's very specific and doesn't exist anymore, but That's when I first saw this movie. And I think I saw the sequel first. The film I want to talk about now is 1992's Waxwork 2.
From the director of Waxwork, Waxwork 2, Lost in Time.
We burned that place down to the ground. Nothing could have escaped that inferno.
I just hope you're right.
When the mayhem ended,
You said it was over! You said it was over!
their adventure began.
You're going to need all the help you can get if you want to continue the fight against evil. Just follow Alice through the looking glass.
Trapped in a terrifying journey through time.
When you first used Solomon's locket, you opened a doorway to another universe. The place where the true battle between good and evil is played out for eternity.
Caught between the forces of darkness and light.
God wants me to be a time warrior?
The Master is no mortal. He is the devil himself.
Now, to get back to the future, they must fight evil throughout the ages.
You guys know how to fight? Let's go kick some butt!
Zach Galligan from Waxwork and Gremlins 1 and 2 stars with Alexander Goodenough from Witness and Die Hard.
You're sick.
Take an action-packed journey through the looking glass and back in time. Waxwork 2, Lost in Time. From
Zach
live.
Galligan was Gremlins fame as the lead. For what it's worth, it is a sequel to a 1988 film, Waxwork. What I love about this as a sequel is same writer and director, basically given a chance to do the things that they weren't able to do the first time. And it lies to the audience in a way, but that's part of the charm. So the original Waxwork is there's a wax museum and the wax people come to life and cause murder and mayhem. It's fine. It's, it is what it is. It's just it's a standard B horror film. The sequel is, I would say, bonkers. So it starts off like many of these sequels, showing you the end of the first movie, where there's the wax museum burns down, a bunch of people die. Zach Galligan and his girlfriend live, and then she gets blamed for the murders and goes on trial for murder of multiple people. But apparently she's out on bail. So you have a courtroom scene, and then she leaves with Zach, and they're like, "Gosh, we gotta do something to get you off these murder charges. Let's go to the waxwork guy's house." And so they go and turn on a 16 millimeter film that the owner of the Waxwork Museum, who is now dead, had made just for this occasion. He's like, "Oh, if you're playing this, you're in trouble. Look around my house of magical artifacts and you may find something to help." They find it's an amulet or like a stopwatch that travels in time. And this is why I love the film. They don't travel through time. They travel through movies. So they literally, the first place they go is into a Hammer-style Frankenstein world. She forgets, she is absorbed by this place and believes that she's there. So Zach Gallagher gets this great idea. He's like, "Hey, if I get Frankenstein's notebooks, I can reanimate somebody," because they blamed it all on a reanimated hand that really caused them. I can show them that you can reanimate matter and she won't be accused of murder anymore. Solid plan. So anyway, that goes awry and they jump through different quote unquote times. But again, it's different genres of movies. One of the movies that they jump into is basically The Haunting, but the professor is played by Bruce Campbell. And that segment's filmed in black and white, and the cinematography is very reflective of the Robert Wise film. It's almost like a parody. Even though the movie says they're jumping through time, they're literally just jumping through movies, and it's very self-aware, very fun, has very little to do with the first movie. I don't know. It's one of those things that I saw. It's one of those films that you try to tell people about at school on Monday, and they call you a liar, throw rocks at you.
You keep bringing that up every time we talk about it. Is there something you need to tell us, Josh? Or a therapist?
I used to make up movies and people threw rocks at me. And I told so many lies that when I told them about Bubba Hotep, they didn't believe me. I was the boy who cried Bubba Hotep. It's just a bizarre, like, early 90s straight-to-video artifact.
There is something special about that era and that type of film that I don't think we're really getting to see too much of now, because Waxwork had a really good premise. It was essentially they would go into these dioramas made by wax figures, and so you'd be transported into that like universe or that world that is depicted by the diorama, and just the transpositioning of that from the wax dioramas to film is just this natural but yet bonkers idea that only the direct-to-video market of the late 80s and early 90s could have come up with.
Right. It's a risky story. I don't think anyone ever thought it wasn't ever going to be a blockbuster, and it wasn't trying to. It's not camp either. Even though it kind of pokes fun of itself, it still takes it, there's a fine line, and it doesn't cross that.
Just seriously enough.
Right. It stays cohesive enough to the narrative, even though it's ridiculous. And it acknowledges that it's ridiculous at points, but it doesn't wink and nudge, and it can be quite broad at times. Like Bruce Campbell's performance is pretty Bruce Campbell-y.
Bruce Campbell.
Yeah. But it's fun. It's the kind of movie that you watch with a bunch of people and don't take seriously. It's a movie. It's popcorn.
Are you all right? I've been looking for you everywhere.
I'm fine. How did you find me?
Trust me, it wasn't easy.
Have you got the book?
The book?
Frankenstein's notebook.
Well, the Loch Ness Monster kind of ate it.
It did?
Yes. But I did get something great from Haiti. You're gonna love this. Look.
What is it?
Is it? It's a voodoo Petro coffin for bringing the dead back to life. I've got an instruction booklet and the Eye of Newt, magic crystals and everything. Wait until the prosecution gets a load of this. Can't imagine some of the places I had to lug this thing through. It's not light, Come on, let's go.
It reminds me a lot of another like horror direct-to-video franchise. Was it Warlock?
Oh,
Julian
yes.
Sand. That.
Yes.
It's just this really weird kind of. You know what? We're just hardly anyone's going to see this, but they've given us a budget. We're going to do what we can with what we have, and
that'd be an interesting topic to explore. Is that kind of narrow band of straight to DVDs, late 80s, early 90s? Because there's, like you said, there's definite feel to it. They have a look to them. They're offbeat. A lot of them did have spawn multiple sequels, and have like a cohesive world building.
Yeah.
Like the Warlock world is, it has rules. It doesn't, it sticks to them.
It had Julian Sands.
Well, yes. Who is an actual warlock. It's a documentary. They just set up the camera.
I think both of the movies were fun, but you're right. There's something about just how far Waxworks 2 takes it that just elevates it. It's almost kind of like Gremlins 2, where they're like, hey, what, just kick the door open and let's just run with this insane idea that someone not only let us make, but want us to do again.
Yeah, and so it's like, and though there's lots of familiarity to it, it's treading some new ground. Like I said, it's a fun movie. I feel like it was ripe to be turn into a mid-90s syndicated Saturday afternoon TV show. Yeah, like it should have come on after Briscoe County Jr. It's Waxwork, the series.
not only did it kind of like expand on, we're going from wax dioramas to films and all that kind of stuff, but didn't they just like totally just shovel in a whole bunch of world building stuff? Like it was traveling universes and fight of good and evil and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's just like it's more than just wax dummies coming to life.
Yeah. So like the climactic scene is they're jumping through time and fighting in all these different genres and stuff, and was the original end of Waxwork, but they ran out of money, so they they just had the place burned down. So the director got to shoehorn in his original ending into this film. So it's like, all right, man, good job. You did it. All right. So what else you want to talk about?
The next movie I have is actually something that's been made within the past 15 years. Unusual for us.
You sure about that?
Yes.
Sometimes we don't know. Like, this is from 5 years ago. Oh my God, it's 1978. Network.
No, I just went and saw this in the movie theater last week. It's this little film called Jaws.
Saw it at the Dollar Theater at the mall.
No, but this is a movie that I think works because it's restructuring, but it is Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle.
Wow, this is a fun group. Welcome to detention. Spencer, Bethany, Fridge, Martha, you're all here for a reason.
Hey, person walking.
You should be thinking about who you are and who you want to be. You'll have plenty of time to figure that out while you're cleaning out the basement.
Are you gonna help or are you too pretty?
I'm too pretty.
Yo, what's this?
A game for those who seek to find a way to leave their world behind. Jumanji. You pick a character and you're that person in the game.
Which one do I pick?
I don't think it matters that much.
Oops, Finbar. Sounds like a badass.
I'll be the curvy genius.
Dr. Smolder Bravestone.
I guess I'm Ruby Roundhouse.
Guys. Oh, they.
Ow! Where's the rest of me?
Oh my God, Fridge?
Yeah, I'm Fridge. Who are you?
It's me, Spencer.
Who is she?
Martha?
Why am I wearing half a shirt and short shorts in the jungle?
I think we got sucked into Jumanji and we become the avatars we chose.
So that means
Bethany?
Oh, Bethany, don't look at it.
I'm an overweight middle-aged man. Well, I don't have my Claritin, and all I see around here is pollen.
Well, I don't have the top 2 feet of my body.
Damn, that is a man right there. Don't cry, don't cry. Don't cry, it's gonna be okay. This is a video game, which means we all have special skills.
Why am I running so slow?
That was so intense. I can't even with this place.
Watch your step in here.
Maybe we're all in a coma.
What? That old game machine must have electrocuted us, and now we're all... Oh my God! You better get in there and save her.
I'm not gonna get in there. You get in there.
I got a backpack on. You don't get in water with a backpack. Everybody knows that.
As a kid, I remember the Jumanji book, the big picture book and everything. It was, I would have to say, iconic for our generation. It won a whole bunch of awards, and all the librarians would pull it out at the, and show the kids in the school or whatever.
I've never read the book.
Well, it's pictures, so no, you didn't read it.
No, I'm sure that there are words somewhere. Yes. What year is this?
The original movie was made in the 90s, and it starred Robin Williams, and it was meh.
I didn't like Jumanji at all. It was a cultural phenomenon. I guess it made it scads of money, but I didn't really like the movie. And
despite the fact that David Alan Grier was in it.
Yes.
Let's be honest. Between Robin Williams and David Alan Grier is the better comedic actor.
I was about to say exactly that I really love David Alan Grier, and there's something about Robin Williams. Like at one point I soured on him. Like, he just lost it when Frank Caliendo, I think, did an impersonation of him. And it was so spot on, the kind of like manic fake improv.
Yeah.
That I was like, oh, that's what he's doing. Frank Caliendo, thank you for robbing me of joy.
I think that moment actually came when I remember watching like one of his HBO specials in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And then like later I saw like one of his earlier HBO specials, and he had the exact same joke.
Oh, he stole from himself.
Oh, okay. And it was supposed to have been, like it was an impromptu thing. Like I remember the joke. He looked at somebody in the balcony and said, good to see you here, Mr. Lincoln, or President Lincoln, or something like that. And it's like, oh, he did that joke almost like 10 years apart. All right.
Yikes.
This isn't, yeah. The veil has been lifted.
I loved Mork and Mindy. I was big on Mork and Mindy when I was a kid. And I think some of his dramatic work is fine. But over the manic, coked out Robin Williams just doesn't do it for me. But I mean, even like Hook, and he made a lot of bad movies. What was the Toys is unwatchable. Unwatchable. Like, I have a visceral reaction to that movie. What else did he? Popeye is the same thing. I cannot stand Popeye. That's a Robert Altman film.
Yeah.
Like, I don't, but like, I have always I can't watch it. It makes me like angry that this movie exists. And I know there are fans of Popeye out there. And I'm sure that there's treatment options. We can.
There's a 12-step program somewhere out there for you. But like I said, the 90s Jumanji, I just really didn't enjoy it very much. It was also part of that, hey, we have CGI now movement that happened in the 90s that, continues to this day. That we could just use CGI and that'll make the movie. No. But Welcome to the Jungle, I actually enjoyed. I think it's a good evolution of the concept.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes from a board game to a video game, like this thing that is already shown to be some sort of mystical device is able to evolve and fit with the current landscape. Because I think the original thing you see is, like somebody finds the board game and like throw it away. So then it converts itself into like a video game console.
Yeah, it looks like a Sega Genesis or something, which is hilarious because it's like that's not an ancient console. Yeah, it is, dude. Those kids don't know what a cartridge is, man. You're old. It is a fantastic update. It really is. Like, whoever thought of that earned their paycheck. Because this movie made $gazillion dollars too.
Yeah.
I think it was a surprise hit too, because it was kind of just like, oh, let's make some money, and then
we still own this IP. Let's do something with it before we lose it. And
and the cast is like perfect, such a great cast.
Yeah, and like I say, it also flips the script a little bit. Instead of bringing the world of Jumanji into the real world, it pulls them into this fictional world, and I think it does a good play on like video game tropes. Was it Rise Darby? Is essentially the exposition guy, and so they try and talk to him at a point, and he's just going through the exposition no matter what they say. Like he's on rails.
Yeah, they're like, it's an unskippable scene. And they play around with like having multiple lives and stuff like that. It's Free Guy would borrow heavily from Jumanji. Welcome to the Jungle, Part 1. The Jumanji Begins. That's the actual title.
It's a fun movie. It's, I think, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, great. He's good at comedy. Like the dude, if you've seen his WWF career,
I was going to say, yeah.
you can tell he's good at comedy. He knows how to play with the audience and the expectations and everything. And of course, Kevin Hart and all that. And I love how they play with just the characters and all that kind of stuff. Like Dwayne's character, of course, is like super just good at everything. And the conceit being is that in the real world, he's played by the nerd.
Mm-hmm.
And Kevin Hart is, from the real world, he's the jock. He's the super guy. And so you reverse their roles. While The Rock's character is just almost impervious and he's got the smoldering good, looks like that's literally like a trait, is smoldering. Kevin Hart is just like, he's the sidekick and he carries all the weapons and everything for The Rock's character, and his weakness is cake.
What'd you just do?
Strengths: fearless, climbing, speed, boomerang, smoldering intensity.
What the hell are you doing?
What just happened?
You just smoldered.
Weakness. None?
How'd you do that? That list?
Well, I think I just pressed my enormous left pec.
Yeah, it's like the boob area. Let me show you.
Get the hell away from me.
At least press it in front of us so we know exactly how to...
Strengths, karate, tai chi, aikido, dance fighting. Dance fighting? Is it even a thing? Weakness, venom.
Seriously. Paleontology. What does that even mean?
Study of fossils, I think. That's kind of cool.
Says the gorgeous karate badass to the old fossil guy who doesn't have any endurance.
I hate this game.
Weakness? Cake.
Yes, cake is my weakness, along with speed and strength.
Huh.
Strength is my weakness. Hey, quick question. How is strength my weakness? Somebody explain that to me. And why would I need speed? Why would I need to be fast when I'm being chased by an enormous killer zebra or some shit in this dumbass hat?
You're also a good weapons valet.
What does that mean?
Well, I think it means you carry my weapons in your backpack and you give them to me when and if I need them.
It's a fun movie. It plays with tropes. It plays with character archetypes. I really enjoyed watching it. I didn't think I would.
Yeah.
Like, this is one of those, along with the genre movies we've already talked about, action, horror, and comedy. There's another one that's most likely to get sequels, and those are kids' movies.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I would say
this is a family film. Yeah.
This is a family film. And those are few and far between these days.
Yeah,
and this was an actual. There's something for everybody. There's some innuendo for the adult, but even without that, it's you're a grown man. You enjoyed it. That's like
well, Karen Gilliam. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
And not forget Jack Black.
Jack Black
you have to give Jack Black credit. Like, he does like a teenage girl so well. Like, just the voice and the cadence and where it goes up in pitch and everything at the right moments.
Yeah, it's a really fantastic film. Again, it's not it's not going to change the world, but it's not a waste of time, and it's family friendly.
It's a lot of fun, and I will say the sequel to it as well is good.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to give props to both Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Kevin Hart on that, because there's a switch up, and their characters, their real life counterparts, are played by Danny DeVito and Danny Glover, and they both do a great job of like bringing those characteristics in to their portrayals in the video games. But fun film, like I said, better than the 90s Jumanji. The 90s just really did feel like a cash in on the IP, where this one, that both of these
did something with it.
Yeah, they played with them. They shook them up. They thought about modern audiences, and they had fun with it. And it's a fun watch.
The best thing about the original Jumanji is that there's a Saturday Night Live sketch where Kristen Wiig refuses to play board games because she doesn't want to get Jumanji'd. they're trying to play like Ticket to Ride, and she's like, "Oh no." It's worth knowing what Jumanji is to enjoy that sketch.
But again, there's a book.
Fair point. But I believe in the sketch she she refers directly to the film, so it doesn't work with the book. Jokes just fall flat.
Uh-huh.
All right, I want to talk quickly. There's no way we haven't talked about this like a million times, but it's
let's talk about it again.
Yeah, why the hell not? I don't remember because I'm old, and we might have talked about this last week.
I'm old and an alcoholic. My memory's not so good.
Right. And the other thing that's frustrating is we've known each other for decades, and we've had a lot of these conversations just not recorded. So it's like,
but we don't have we recorded this, or did we just talk about this?
Right. Was this at the North End Zone, or was this on the podcast? Who knows? Does it matter? No. The film I want to talk about is the Sam Raimi classic, the film that got me into film, Evil Dead 2.
I'm all right.
I don't think so.
There's something out there. It lives out in those woods. In the dark. Something that's come back from the dead.
Hello, lover.
Son of a...
I'll swallow your soul. I'll swallow your soul.
Swallow this.
And also, I want to point out, this is another film, though not made direct-to-video. This is one that lived in the video stores.
Yes.
I don't know if you are introduced it the same way I was, but this is a film that when you had your sleepover at a friend's house and you went to the video store and you picked something out, this is one of those ones you picked out.
So I backed into Evil Dead 2 from Army of Darkness. I saw the trailer for Army of Darkness. I was like, oh my God, this looks awesome. My nephew and I went and saw it. And during the beginning sequence, he was like, I think I've seen this movie. I'm like, dude, we're in the movie theater. How could you have possibly seen this? He's like, no, I think I've seen this with my dad. And so we watched Army of Darkness, and then he went home and talked to his dad. He's like, oh. And so we watched Evil Dead 2. We're like, oh, okay. There's a whole world that just opened up to us. And then we went and watched Evil Dead, and we're like, oh. That's different.
That's one of those. If you go back to Evil Dead, you're after seeing Evil Dead 2, you're like, But if you saw it first, you'd understand it. That's. I don't want to take away from what you're going to say, but I do think it needs to be noted that Evil Dead 2, and they say this in one of the many commentary tracks that exist for the Evil Dead 2 movie, is that it is the first both sequel and remake.
Yes.
The first Evil Dead was pretty much a straight-up horror film with black comedy, whereas Evil Dead 2 is like this slapstick comedy with these over-the-top gory horror aspects.
Right. So, I mean, the story is the same of Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. These kids go out to this cabin. They start messing around with recordings of somebody translating the Book of the Dead, so the people start becoming possessed. They chop each other up in the end.
Family movie.
Yeah. So in the first film, like I said, it is a straight horror film. It is low budget. They raise the money themselves. I'm sure that there are tons of podcasts and there are books written about this film because it did launch the career of Bruce Campbell, Sam Raimi, Rob Taper. Like they all became real players in Hollywood, and they started out getting money from dentists and family friends and stuff. And Evil Dead 2 largely was the same kind of, though it had a little more moderate success in the theater, but it's a complete remake sequel at the same time. It really does exist in that weird space where like the events of the first movie happened, but the events of the first movie are happening. Some of the artifacts of that is this big giant puppet monster at the end, and the victims are like encased in it, but it's the victims from the first movie. So there's kind of weird overlaps.
And there's an odd thing about Evil Dead 2. There's a weird little trivia in that people think that Ash, the character Ash, was stupid enough to go back to the cabin with a new group of friends because the way it was retold, we didn't own the rights to our own movie that was done by New Line Cinema. The second movie was done by Dino De Laurentiis. Well, we didn't have the rights. We couldn't get the rights to our own movie, which is the most ridiculous thing ever. So we just shot a recap with different actors as though that was the recap, but people thought, what's with he's coming back to the same cabin with these new people? What? So there's a big debate of is Evil Dead 2 a remake or a sequel? It's a requel. It's whatever you want to call it. So if you really want to do it right, you take the first Evil Dead up to where the evil entity hits me, cut off all the recap, go right into Ash being thrown through the trees at the beginning, lands, play the movie. It would all make perfect sense.
But, and it's turned into an IP. It's a huge franchise now. And the first film has a lot of great cinematography in it, too, because, Sam Raimi he's a fantastic filmmaker. He was born to make films. He did a lot of research on smoke and mirror and vaudeville and stage stuff. So like a lot of
Dutch
stuff a lot of stuff is in camera. And so he was able to do a lot of things that look fantastic, but didn't cost much.
We also have to mention like his major breakthrough on that is essentially just strapping the camera to the front of his dirt bike.
Yep. Or 2 planks of plywood and having guys run through the forest
or just suspending it from a rope and swinging it through a window.
Yeah. So super innovative. There's some rear screen projection stuff. It's got old Hollywood aesthetic to it because he's using a lot of older techniques because they were what was available to him and they were cheap, but it gives it a certain feel, and that carries over into Army of Darkness, even though that was a much larger budget, but he kept kind of that, like in Army of Darkness, the scene in the cemetery is obviously a set, but it has that Vincent Price-esque kind of feel to it.
It feels like an old, like James Weld Frankenstein or Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah. It has classic sensibilities. And of course, Sam Raimi would go on to do the Spider-Man films, which set the template for a lot of future superhero films.
Plus also just on topic as well, Spider-Man 2 better than Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah. Easily. You got Alfred Molina, you got a movie.
You put tentacles on Alfred Molina, you got yourself a blockbuster hit.
They worked for Far From Home or whatever. Yeah, very good point. What I love about Raimi is that he has his own style, but it was the first time. It's very upfront, but at the same time, like the aesthetics are unobtrusive, even though they are kind of wild cameras. They all make sense within the context of what you're watching. It's not gimmicky for the sake of gimmick. It's gimmicky for the sake of elevating the film. And so watching Evil Dead 2, I was like, I would like to do this. I never did, but I would like to.
I would still like to.
There's a direct line from that to this podcast. So if you don't like this podcast, reach out to Mr. Sam Raimi and say, you and your buddy Bruce are to blame. Don't blame me. But I mean, I don't want to get too into it, but it's fantastic. You hit the nail on the head. It mixes slapstick, gore, suspense. It is a funny movie. It has moments that are frightening. It has one of the greatest overdubbed lines in all of history.
Even though you're not bringing up, you did say this once before, and I think it's a good point to make. The difference between Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, like Evil Dead, as we said, is a straightforward horror film. It is people being tormented by the supernatural, whereas Evil Dead 2 is a guy who has been mentally broken by the supernatural.
Yes, yeah. So I did some papers in movie school on this. That the themes of Evil Dead 2 are very much the everyman in extraordinary situations. Much like a Hitchcock film. But there's a definite point in the film where Ash's character breaks. He breaks mentally, and it explains like the bravado and kind of brashness of his character in Army of Darkness. But he loses it, and that you have to get to that point to chop off your hand and attach a chainsaw to it, carve up a witch.
And I will say I've enjoyed like the continuation of the franchise, like it keeps going. Mm-hmm. And what I love about it is like they are sequels, but at the same time, like it's almost like a divergent timeline thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just enough of it that it's the same thing, but we're taking this in a different direction and we're playing around with the foundation of it a little bit.
It's less of an IP and more of a, I don't want to say brand, but more it's more of a more of a genre in itself. Like we're making an Evil Dead movie. That's very specific, and everyone that's been entrusted with the franchise, for the most part, like Ash vs. Evil Dead was fantastic. The 2015 remake that I can't remember his name. I think he just did.
He did the
Alien,
the Alien Romulus.
Yeah, it's good, and it's more straight horror, but like it takes and adds new things to it. Like the main character they're out in the woods trying to detox her from drugs. And so she starts seeing things and they think it's just detox. So it's like, that's interesting. And then Evil Dead Rise, I really like. A lot of people didn't like it, but I thought it was fantastic because it was like, let's put the Evil Dead in a apartment complex in the city and see what happens. It made some bold choices and it had callbacks to the original and it was good. I quite enjoyed it. So,
and now we apparently have an animation series coming out.
Yeah.
To look forward to.
I'm all on board. I can't think of, maybe the video games kind of suck, but I didn't really play them. But I think it's been a well cared for property. Everyone's had the proper irreverent for what they were doing. Everybody knew what it was that's been involved in it and has done a great job. Because especially, Army of Darkness gets like, it's not even a horror film. It's like an action comedy.
It is a lot like Aliens is to Alien. Alien is a horror film. It's a sci-fi horror. Aliens is a sci-fi action film with horror elements. And that's kind of what Army of Darkness is. It's an action comedy with some horror elements kind of sprinkled in.
Agreed. Yeah, so speaking of James Cameron, Terminator 2 I think is better than Terminator.
But would you like quadruple the budget and kind of let him go?
I mean, yeah, but Terminator 2 was also, it's like there's certain things that you can't be objective about, and I cannot be objective about that film because the advertising and build up to it was so ubiquitous, and I was at such an impressionable age when it came out. I mean, like it was tied into freaking Guns N' Roses' new album, like for the first time in several years. So it was like, there's a lot going into that marketing strategy. Cause I remember, waiting for the You Could Be Mine video to premiere on MTV. You know,
it was a cultural milestone,
and for a film that was not, it made an impact. But like I would say, like Alien was like, and Aliens were like way bigger sci-fi properties than Terminator.
Yeah, Terminator was low budget. Yes.
Yeah, I would say even like RoboCop probably had a deeper cultural footprint than Terminator. And, I mean, yeah, there's the I'll Be Back, but still, it seemed like it was more background radiation. But then, like Terminator 2, it was just like, I don't think it's been repeated. Maybe it has once or twice, but there was such a buzz for that film.
I do think that Terminator did have a place in the zeitgeist. I mean, that's the way that's not only how a sequel got made, but how it got such a huge way. It was the most expensive film made at the time.
The original Terminator?
No, Terminator 2.
Oh, yeah.
The first one was, like I said, low budget. And it was, like I said, it was a horror film with action qualities as well. You know, it had the smaller footprint and everything. But because it's the thing that really launched Schwarzenegger into stardom.
That's true.
It was a movie that was watched quite a bit because it was so big and it led to Terminator 2. Terminator 2 did eclipse the original.
Yes, and then it's been a free fall since.
Yeah.
That's another kind of, you go past 2, typically you're not going to have a good time.
There's so many films because when I was thinking about this, again, mostly genre films, but I'd have to say like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is better than both Temple and Raiders.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Wonder if they'll ever make any more of those.
No, 3's
There, you're right. Quit while you're ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
Could you imagine a 90-year-old Harrison Ford? They'd have to CGI him or something. It'd be weird.
Yeah. It totally lose the impact of the original concept. You have those, I think, you know, we've already mentioned, I think Godfather 2 is better than Godfather. Not saying The Godfather isn't a good movie. It's a great film. But I think Godfather 2 also, when people think of a lot of the kind of iconic things, I think they bleed those two films together. They don't understand that there's actually separation.
Right.
Sometimes. De Niro as the young, you know, Corleone who comes from Sicily and all that. I think people always think of that just as much as they do Sonny getting gunned down at the toll booth.
Right.
But, you know, X-Men, you know, a lot of it is this was lower budget and now we've got a bigger budget and we can kind of refine the formula, or we don't have to spend as much time building the backstory.
Right, but sometimes that can backfire. You know, you're giving more money to do, and it's that the constraint is what was breeding the creativity, and then you get all the money in the world, and you're like, oh, this isn't good. We have, in fact, created a monster.
That aspect of necessity is the mother of invention.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to be more creative. Jaws is a great movie because the mechanical shark didn't work.
Right.
So, okay, we're going to film this like it's from the point of view of the shark. Wow, that's actually very interesting and builds tension. Way to go. We'll just use this music to let you know the shark is there without actually having to show you the shark. You know?
Poor Bruce.
She's talking about Bruce Valanche.
Yeah.
His scenes were cut.
Yes. As I grow older and look more and more like Bruce Valanche, the more I pity him. Why? You should have been center square, Bruce.
Why did Whoopi get all the...
That reference is decades old.
Yes.
I don't even know if there's a Hollywood square, if there are squares of Hollywood people anymore. What a sad world we live in when there's no Hollywood squares. And on that note, Jason, if people want to tell us that our opinions are wrong or right, how can they reach us?
They can just keep them to themselves.
Keep your mouth shut. This is an audience participation show.
You haven't said anything yet, so why would you start now?
Supposed to talk during the show. What's wrong with you?
Listen, we've tried being nice. Maybe just as some reverse psychology might work for us. I don't know. So if you are compelled to get angry at us, you can email us at brickpit@gmail.com, or you can find us on your social medias, Facebook and X, the Brick Pit Podcast, and we'll ignore you just like you've been ignoring us.
Touche. Until next time.